Welcome to the USU Career Studio podcast that helps you navigate your career path. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to tell your friends and family all about it. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere else you listen to get access to our newest content. Thanks for joining us for our Friday face-to-face episode. I'm Marissa Armitstead, your host, and I am so excited to welcome Dr. David Schramm to the show. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, thanks so much, Marissa. I'm so excited to be with you today.
Excited to have you. So, known as Dr. Dave on campus, but also across the country, Dave Schramm is an associate professor and family life extension specialist here at Utah State University in the Department of Human Development and Family Studies. He received his master's degree from USU, his PhD in family studies from Auburn University. From British Columbia to Beijing, China, and from St. Louis to San Diego, Dr. Dave has given over 500 presentations on happiness, parenting, and couple relationships, including the United Nations and a TED Talk in Florida. So, Dave, could not be more excited to have you here on the show today. I would love to start our conversation by having you share a fun fact with our guests, maybe something they wouldn't know otherwise. So what do you have for us, Dave?
Yeah, that was a great question, Marissa. I appreciate you starting this off. You know, some may not know that I have 4 different degrees from 4 different universities, and actually I've had a child with each of the universities. Isn't that funny? So we have 4 children, but you know, as we kind of bounce around the country, so 4 children, 4 degrees, and from 4 different universities.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I'm curious. We're already going off on tangents, so that's always a good sign here. But I am curious, what was that process like, earning degrees, having kids? I mean, I know that this is a question, especially students that I work with. How do I juggle being a parent and also pursuing higher ed? I don't know, any advice or tips on that?
It kind of relates to my area of family studies, because I received my PhD in family studies. So it wasn't easy, actually, going through. I married young, and then we started having children, and had our 4th child when I was at the University of Missouri, and it was really a balance. And for me, it was putting, family first, and there would be nights, honestly, where I would put the children to bed, and then sometimes I'd put my wife to bed, and then I would stay up and I would study, because I really wanted to make sure that those young years that I really invested a lot of my time with those, because I realized how critical those relationships are, especially when they're young.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice. So keep the family close, even though you're going to be tired.
yeah, that's right. There's some tired long nights for sure.
Oh, I love that. Okay, well, I'm so excited to dive into our conversation today, really kind of centered around, there's so many degrees within even just the College of Education and Human Services. And how do we turn that into careers? How do we take a degree and where can that lead us? So I'd actually love to start by just having you talk to us a little bit about, where did your interest for families and relationships, where did this all kind of stem from?
Yeah, a great question. And many students, especially in human development family studies, they come, they say, I want to help people. I want to help you. And I was no different. I was raised in a great family in Payson, good old Payson, Utah. I have 4 older sisters and younger brothers, so a really strong family. And then I soon realized, as I traveled a little bit, I thought, man, not all families are like the Schramm fam. And I really felt like I want to do my best to really strengthen families and couples and relationships. And so that's really where it started, was really as a foundation of my own family. And I thought, I want to help people have that same type of joy and happiness that I had in my own family growing up. So that's really where it started.
I love that. Yes. And not everybody has the Schramm fam. I love that. So I'm super curious, stepping outside of yourself for, 2 seconds here, as a professor, as a researcher, like you have many hats that you wear here at USU and beyond. I'm curious, what does the average day for you on the job look like, or does it change every day?
You know what? Mine is unlike probably most researchers, most scholars, definitely those in our department. I'm maybe a little bit weird, but it's a unique position. So I have an extension position where about 60% of my time is really devoted to extension activities. Extension meaning, for listeners who are not sure what that is, they probably have heard of 4-H, and that's one of the most well-known extension programs. But extension really is about taking the research and literally extending it out to Utahns or out to those who we serve. So we take the research, we develop programs, and in my case, programs on happiness and positivity, on parenting, on couple relationships and strong families. So each day, honestly, is a little bit different. The days that I spend here are okay, but I really look forward to getting out of the office and traveling the state and presenting workshops. And I do high school assemblies from Logan to St. George, and I go and I present at conferences. And so that's really kind of the highlight for me, is getting out of actually the office. And so, yeah, there'll be days when I'm doing research, like I've got a big research day today, working with students, but then I'm preparing for a presentation, developing programs, evaluation, traveling, doing trainings. So each day, which is, I love actually that part of my job, that it's not the same thing day in and day out. So for me, this job it's a dream job. And I love actually talking with students who are interested and say, I want to help people. I want to help families. And then I let them know a little bit about what I do. And their faces and their eyes light up and say, I didn't even know this existed. I love this. How can I do what you do? So I wouldn't say that there's a typical day, honestly. Each day is a little bit different. And that's actually what I love about it.
I love that. And so, Dave, not everybody is as lucky as you are to have found a job that you genuinely enjoy and even love. So maybe go back in time a little bit for us. Talk us through like your first job out of college, and maybe compare that. I don't know, just talk to us about kind of that first job and how that kind of led you to where you are.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was at Auburn University, getting my PhD, getting ready to graduate, on the job market, looking around to say, okay, where am I going to land? What am I going to do? And that's a stressful. I think a lot of students can relate. That's a really stressful time. It's these, I call it kind of the decade of decisions between about 14 and 24. You're making these decisions that will set this trajectory for the rest of your life. So for me, as I apply to different universities and programs, I found it comes down honestly to fit. And probably others have said, it's so important to find the right fit. So I actually landed a job at the University of Missouri, in Columbia, Missouri, and I actually loved it. It's an extension position. So I had some extension, I had some research, I had some teaching, and I really enjoyed that. For 9 years, I was at Mizzou, and it was, the difficult days and all that juggling and starting out, because 1 minute I'm doing tests, and the other day, the very next, I'm giving tests to students. So it was kind of this weird transition. And I think for all students, as they transition into that first position, that first job, and kind of getting a feel of what that is like, everyone will have a different experience with that. But to really pay attention to how you feel, is this challenging me? Which I loved. I loved that it was challenging. I love that I had some flexibility as well, that it wasn't this someone telling me what I had to do every day, and some creativity. So I was able to use my strengths. I think that's a big takeaway, is I brought some strengths, and I was able and enabled and actually encouraged to use my strengths at that first job at the University of Missouri for 9 years.
Wow. So many good topics. As a career coach, we could talk about this for probably 500 years. I will keep it short for today, but I love those insights. I love kind of this mention of fit, and we'll talk more about that later on in the conversation, but also this thought of using your strengths, knowing what your strengths are, and being able to use them in the workplace is so key. So I really appreciate both of those insights. Dave, I'm going to turn the conversation a little bit and get a little bit personal for just a half a second here. So given your research, given the things that you are doing on a daily basis, I'm really curious, are there any memorable experiences that you've had with a family member, maybe somewhat recently, that impacted you deeply? So just one of those moments where you're just kind of caught and you're like, oh my gosh, and it just kind of hits you. And then maybe talk to us a little bit about some of the research that you've done that maybe helps us explain, why that interaction impacted you so deeply. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, for sure it does. I love that question, actually. So it was just maybe a couple of weeks ago. I think the Schramm fam was in Disneyland of all places. So we were in Disneyland. I took the Schramm fam, kind of just the six of us, our last hurrah. Let's go and really celebrate before our children. We have a freshman here at USU, another daughter who's 20. So they're kind of going in different directions. We said, let's do this. But you know what we did? We planned. We flew out my daughter's boyfriend. She didn't know this, to Disneyland.
Aww.
we went over here to a ride, and he was in the castle, and we're getting the pictures, and the photographers there, everybody's in on it except for our daughter. And she's doing these pictures, and lo and behold,
Oh my gosh.
her boyfriend John comes up to her, taps her on the shoulder. She turns around and is just totally shocked. She actually backs away from the video. It's really funny. She backs away from him, pretty scared. And then he gets down on one knee, a crowd gathers.
Oh my gosh.
Right? This magical moment in the so the reason I say that is because I love studying newlyweds. I love that new stage. I actually conducted one of the largest studies as a master's student here at USU, studies on newlyweds in the history of the state. I studied over 1,000 newlywed couples, and I surveyed them because I know that the one minute, it's this, oh, I love you, but then the next, it's, oh, I bug you type of transition. It's like, what happens, during that early stage. And so it's been interesting for me as a father, but also as a researcher, to kind of see this, this love and this joy, all these moments, and then she gets engaged. As for me as a dad, it was one of these pivotal moments. Our oldest is getting engaged. I study this for a living.
Yeah.
I know the questions that they need to be asking. I know the obstacles that are soon to come, all this that's going to be happening with them. So I know the research side of it. I know the personal side of it. And when those collide, oh my goodness, I had all these just mixed feelings and emotions, excited, a little nervous because I know what marriage holds, and it can be hard. There could be hard times through this, difficult experiences. And so, and we love him, by the way. He's a great young man, really good for her, and just a great young man. So it was that where it collided with the personal, with the professional, and being able to see them grow and develop and help them through. And it's going to be hard for me. I admit, kind of this father-in-law, right? Is this dad?
Yes.
And be like, oh, you don't say that. Oh, wait a minute, right?
I know the research behind that.
Yeah, but I won't tell you what you're doing around here, or that, or whatever it is. I'll try to keep Dr. Dave, zip it up and just kind of watch that develop, because it needs to develop. But yeah, so that's, I guess.
I love that.
With little
and what a fun engagement idea. You win the prize there.
yeah, it was so much fun. It all worked out so great.
Man, I love that. Okay. Well, I love that we're kind of hinting on this research that you've been doing. And I'd actually love to dive into that a little bit more. Oftentimes, especially for, freshmen, sophomore students, they hear all the time, you should get involved in research. And I think it's a big topic that nobody tends to explain in great depth. So I'm really curious to have you walk us through what kinds of research have you done? I'm guessing there's been a significant amount of qualitative, but maybe also quantitative, maybe mixed methods. So talk us through some of the research that you've done, and maybe what has been some of the most interesting.
Yeah, great questions. Again, I love talking about the research and about how I apply it with students. I love working with students. I love when students will just come and sit down, and they'll set up a time with me. Dr. Dave, tell me a little bit about what you do and why you do it, your career path. And so I'm totally open to that. I love talking with and working with students through questions about the different career paths and what they want to do. So mine is really centered, I would say, on parenting, on couple relationships, as I mentioned, starting out with this newlywed study about what is it that predicts happy newlywed couples the first year of marriage. What is it that those who really succeed and those who falter? And so looking at some of the differences, some of the challenges in those relationships. It's kind of pivoted a little bit into, I looked at costs of divorce. And so early on, I looked at what divorce costs, first the United States, and then I was able to do some amazing presentations over actually presented in Beijing, China, on some of this research about what divorce costs. And then since then, I've done, what does divorce cost Utah, Texas, and what does divorce cost the state of Texas? And then more recently, what are some personal costs? What does it cost, an individual who goes through that, from legal fees, to child's new schooling, all those types of little costs that they add up. So I've done some costs around divorce. That has also been related to some divorce programming that I've done some research on. So both in Missouri and here in Utah, I helped with the development of and the implementation of a divorce education course here in Utah, right where I arrived about 5 years ago. Brian Higginbotham and I, another researcher here in our department, we have a contract with the state, and we developed a program that all parents, that they have to take if they're going through a separation or divorce and they have children, they have to take this course. And so it's really a divorce education course. It's to help them go through this stressful time without putting the children in the middle. And so I've worked with graduate students. We have a couple of postdocs right now that we're working with, several publications about what is helpful through this process. Because talk about a very difficult, very painful, very emotional process. And so we've looked at that, about what is helpful through the divorce education process with families. So those are some of the things that I've worked on. I'm also working with some colleagues, actually a former graduate student at Mizzou now, he's at University of Alberta. And we have some graduate students that are helping with this kind of a new divorce and a marriage model. A model meaning simply what is it that predicts positivity and happiness related to the kind of the struggles that individuals and couples experience. What is it that separates those who really thrive again and those who falter? So a lot of the stuff that I do is really related to happy, positive couple relationships. Sometimes the more emotional side, with the divorce and the cost of divorce, of what separation divorce costs the United States. And then I'm doing a lot of evaluation research on programs, the divorce education program. We actually have a contract with the Department of Workforce Services to do webinars and relationship assessments and online relationship classes, and we're assessing the effectiveness of those. And so those are a little smattering, kind of a little taste of some of the research projects that I'm doing right now. And again, I love working with students on the projects that they're interested in as well, and seeing how they can tie into some of the things that I'm doing.
Wow, so interesting, Dave. And I'm sure as some folks are listening, you're going to be getting a lot of emails. So prepare now for the emails.
Again, love working with students. I'm happy to meet with anyone, to talk about their interest.
Fabulous. Okay. Well, I'd love to move into and actually talk about your TEDx talk that you did somewhat recently, I think 2020, if that's right. And so in this, kind of the theme of it is the secret sauce to a booming business. And you actually dive in and you talk about some similarities between families and thriving business culture. I'm super curious and would love to have you share maybe kind of just an overview of what that TED Talk entails. And then also any advice that you have for students, maybe especially graduating students as they're nearing their college degree, they're starting to look for jobs. How do they find cultures that are going to help them thrive?
Yeah. This project was so interesting, and then how it's evolved and what it's turned into. Really, I had no business class background, right, Marissa? I'm a family scholar. But I found it very interesting that, first off, all of us have families, all of us, they're born into this life. We all have three needs: the needs for safety, the need for satisfaction to do fun, enjoyable things, and the need for connection. So those are fundamental needs that we all have. So it was actually interesting. I started driving up, I-15, and I'm looking at billboards. That's kind of how it started. And I saw these billboards from banks and car dealers and furniture stores that said things like, "Welcome to the family, welcome home." And I thought, that's interesting. What would businesses kind of tap into this family idea, family concept? And so that's when I started digging a little bit more. And I actually studied Inc.com. They come up every year with the best places to work in the United States. And so I looked at their list, and they had 346 that came out on top. And I wanted to know what is it about those great places to work. And they each had 100-word summaries and they answer the question, why do we think we're a great place to work? And so I studied all 346 summaries and looking for themes. I learned about what they offered, and I did this word analysis, and the 15 words used most frequently aligned with the same three fundamental needs for human flourishing, right? With safety, they said things like benefits and care and environment and help and support. With the need for satisfaction, they said things like fun and growth and happy and development, perks even. And then with the need for connection, in these summaries, they said words like team and culture. Those dominated actually the descriptions. People, values, and then the ninth most frequently used word was family. And that's really when it hit me that the secret sauce to being a top workplace is meeting the three needs and treating employees like family. And so it was this big realization that I thought, wow, this is why these businesses are flourishing. One of the reasons why is because they treat their employees like family. They're asking them about their day. They take them one-on-one, right, for lunch or playing ping pong or doing things with them, just like parents would do. And so I actually visited some of these top workplaces, the ones here in Utah, and I visited them and I paid attention. I looked for that feel. And it's interesting. So my tips for students as they're getting ready to go on the job market, as they're looking and interviewing, and right now it's a great time because now it just feels like the job market, they can kind of pick and choose a little bit. So take their time and not be too quick to jump on a job, even if it's like salary and the great perks and things. But it's more of paying attention again to the fit. How you feel. Does it feel like family? Is there genuine care and concern? Can you see that? Maybe talk to some of the other employees there. If you know people who work there, ask them about how they're treated. Ask them about some of the things that they offer. Of course, the benefits and the salary, all that has to fit. But really, it comes down to that. Does this feel like family? Does it feel like a place where I can grow, where they're reward my behavior? I can use my strengths, coming back to what we talked about before. All of this that you bring, does it feel like, yes, this will be a place where I can contribute and I'll be recognized for my contributions. I can grow and there's space for me. And wow, does it feel like family? So those are a few of the kind of a quick overview of the research that I did, looking at what makes for great workplaces. And it really is the same three things that make for strong families, and it's safety, satisfaction, and connection.
Fascinating. I'm gonna have to dig into this research even more. I think this is so interesting. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And Dave, I'm super sad and honestly I'm shocked that we're almost out of time, but I do want to close with one final question. And that question is, if you think back to maybe 18-year-old Dave, maybe just getting started with college or other things, what kind of a career or even family advice would you give to Dave just about life?
Mhm. That's really good, Marissa. I think looking back, I had such a narrow vision of, yeah, this is what I want to do. At first, I wanted to be a marriage family therapist, actually, and then I changed. And it's not uncommon for people to change. I didn't get accepted into the school that I really was planning on. Here's my career path, and I didn't, but I got accepted then here at Utah State. I met people and found out about extension, and so things will tend to work out if we'll be patient, if we will keep an open mind about the different paths, be open for opportunities of exploration, and not be so centered on maybe this is the only path. If this doesn't happen, then I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I was very I was driven, I was motivated, but for me, I could only see one direction. And it wasn't until I would take a step back and see a bigger picture. But now looking back, honestly, I can see how, wow, I'm so grateful that this led to this and this opportunity. So being open to opportunities, being humble and willing to learn from anyone. I think you can learn from anyone. Honestly, that some of the great things that I do, I contribute to honestly standing on the shoulders of giants, of mentors who treated me like a colleague. I had some great professors and teachers. So being open to learn and not get through school so fast, but stop and enjoy the little micro moments, right, of learning and growing and paying attention. And then another one I would say, Marissa, is never failing to thank those who have taught you well. I learned that lesson early on. Never fail to thank those who have taught you well. And I've written letters of past people in my life that say, man, I'm so grateful for this moment, this experience, and for your mentoring, your love, your support for me. So yeah, looking back, those are some things that I would say to my young self is be humble, be grateful, be open to new opportunities and explorations, because you never know. Kind of, it's an exciting time of all kinds of possibilities. So be open to those and never stop learning and growing.
Oh, so many good nuggets. And one thing I especially love One of the biggest career myths that I think career coaches come across as they work with students is this idea that there is one right way to live their life. There's one right career, there's one right degree. And it's so interesting because as students become more open to the idea of multiple pathways of happiness, suddenly that pressure is removed and they're able to just be curious and explore what they're interested in without this pressure and fear of choosing wrong. And so I really appreciate you touching on that, and also of gratitude as you do move throughout your career. I think all of those are such great insights. So I so appreciate you, Dave, coming on the show today, sharing some amazing insights. Like I said, be prepared for lots of emails from students.
Yes, yeah, always willing to help. I'm happy to help pass what I've learned along to the next generation. That's what brings me joy.
Thanks so much, Dave. We hope you loved this episode of the USU Career Studio podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and share this episode with your friends and family.